I used to be all about spiritual energy and all this other stuff, and it's kind of like I calmed all my entitlements down and living in like my world, and I kind of tapped into reality. And so more now, I accept everything he says. Everything he says is not so much like a culture shock. It's more or less like how you were saying earlier in the car that it's just like you listen to them and it's like a you know these things, but it's a reassuring type of thing. Like, okay, no, I was living wrong. This is how I'm supposed to live, type of deal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in terms of touching up on the whole cheating thing, I mean, Byron always says, and this is a very accurate statement, the further up you go in the social ladder, if you're a woman, most women are going to be looking at, ideally, idealistically, the top 10, top 5, top 1%.
Right.
And some women may choose a guy in the top 40%. Who might say, I don't want to deal with the infidelity. This may not be my ideal guy looks wise. I probably would prefer a guy who's wealthier, but I know how things turn out. At the end of the day, everything has principle. And the saddest thing, the saddest reality is so many guys that don't make much money, that aren't good looking, that aren't the best potential partner, even a lot of them will cheat themselves. So I think that there's, watching a bunch of these episodes, you see, unfortunately, that there's a lot of a misunderstanding from the female's perspective on how these things turn out.
Because we don't choose to understand men or get to understand our men. We get with people and we expect them to do up these things. Like, you're supposed to take care of me. You're supposed to make sure I'm good. You're supposed to, like, even to the point, buy me food and all the extra perks that it's like, did you deserve that though? And it's like a lot of women don't deserve these things because they feel like it's just given to them naturally off of the rip.
No, because there are a lot of guys that do that, and then that kind of ties into the whole, like, is the guy looking to date you, or is he just looking for something?
Right.
That's a good component. So, okay, so being on the show, you've obviously learned some things. This is a big one. What's it like? I have a bunch of other, like, I guess more personal questions, but what's it like experiencing the girls who get kicked off? Do you feel do you feel like they're at some point understanding, or let me rephrase the question, do you feel like the other women on the panel who stay on, do they agree with Myron's side of it? Are they neutral? Like, how do you feel about it? Because there's a lot.
Majority of the times it's just depends on the topic. A lot of the time, like, girls get in their feelings when it comes down to topics over grade, and like certain areas that it's just they just can't agree with. But how I personally deal with them, it's like no matter how the conversation went or how it goes, I'm not gonna match your energy. So like if you're like high rising, like raging, I'm gonna like be calm. From the beginning, I already set like my tone, so it's kind of like everybody respects me. So it's like once I speak to them, hey babe, look, here's your purse, here's your phone. I'm sorry that happened to you. Look, come over here, come get your shoes. All right, yeah, I get it. It's hey, it happens. All right, you done putting on your shoes? All right, let's go. Get out. It's not. I don't try to sit up there and like, no, bitch, you're fucking wrong, and starts arguing. Like, why do I need to argue with you? You already made yourself look stupid on camera. You gave Byron what he wanted. The content. You gave him the content.
He says, yeah, that's what he says. He says, like, you're just doing me a favor. You're helping the algorithm.
So at the end of the day, it's like, thanks.
Right, but it's good that you handle it calmly. That's the best way to do it. Because if you started getting as angry,
mundur.
BlackRock gives Macron kudos even as the French hold back their love. This is from October 26, 2017. French president stuck with low popularity ratings in polls. Tough reforms that please investors are angering some critics.
They gave cooties is what they gave.
That's right. So he's doing the bidding of the bankers, and his popularity goes in the crapper. But BlackRock, those are the people rapers of the world. They have more money than most countries.
If you were running against anyone here, because enough people have heard of BlackRock at this point where it just sounds ominous. I don't know why they wouldn't run it. Be supported by BlackRock. If you want BlackRock, they just keep hammering that.
French President Emmanuel Macron is hugely popular with money managers like BlackRock Inc., that is. While Macron languishes in the French polls, investors give him high marks for his plans to reform the country. On Wednesday, the president dined with 21 top executives of the world's biggest funds, including BlackRock chairman Larry Fink.
The king of woke.
Under a skylight and an 18th century crystal chandelier in the... How do you say this?
Elysee?
Alizé, that's it. Alizé presidential, that's it. Alizé presidential palace, Winter Garden. Macron presented to them in English his plans to transform the 1,500-year-old nation. Yesterday's session was beneficial to the investors present and reinforced the view that the opportunities in France are the strongest they've been in 2 decades, BlackRock said in an emailed statement. We're encouraged by the French government's dynamic approach to screwing over their pensioners.
Wait, when they whip out dynamic, man.
Yes. Their dynamic approach, I lost it, to economic transformation. That means transferring wealth upwards from the workers.
Yes.
That's what that means.
Transformation.
Economic transformation, meaning raising the retirement age. That's going to transform the economy. We continue to be interested in the long-term investment opportunities that the country has to offer as long as you keep screwing your people over economically. It's good for us. According to a Macron advisor present at the dinner, the investors asked about investment opportunities and pragmatic questions about France and its unions. They told the president continental Europe's economies represented stability in the face of global instability. Really? Make these bigger. Striking workers stormed BlackRock's Paris office to protest the corporate giant's rollout. So there they are. I buried the lead. I should have led with this. What the fuck am I doing? Jeremy Schmidt, a union spokesperson, said, the meaning of this action is quite simple. We went to the headquarters of BlackRock to tell them the money of workers for our pensions, they're taking it. BlackRock manages over $10 trillion in assets, including massive pension plans. So what did they do? They stormed it. So this is inside BlackRock. I love the French. Can I just say that I love the French? I'm sure there's things I might not like, but this is like January 6th level of violence. Where's the cops to give him a tour? Shouldn't there be some cops in there to give him a tour?
I don't think they planned on this one.
I don't think so. French protesters invade BlackRock's offices because of its private pension fund activity. Protester Francois Onik, 51, told Reuters the government wants to throw away pensions. It wants to force people to fund their own retirement with private pension funds. Of course, that's what BlackRock wants. That's what George Bush tried to do here in the United States in the early aughts when he was trying to, we're going to give some of that money back to you. Then you can put it in the market. That's your own money. You can put it in. Yeah, they want your retirement money in the stock market. That's what they want. They want your money. George Carlin was right when he said they're coming for your Social Security. That's what they're doing. You want to say something, Kurt?
Hi.
Oh yeah, it took me a while to realize pension meant their Social Security.
Their Social Security is a pension, yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a public pension. They want to make them move all their money to private pension, just like in the United
The
States.
thing that everybody would freak out about here,
That's right.
that's what they did. Right.
Instead of burning down small businesses in Kenosha and Portland, it looks like the French have stumbled upon the actual enemy.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how you know when it's a real grassroots thing and not
Yeah.
a thing filled with feds and
But
God knows what else
they're burning-
infiltrating things.
if they're burning down local grocery stores and stuff like that, it's a Fed infiltrated bullshit thing. But this is how you're supposed to do it. You go to BlackRock headquarters. And it gets worse. There's the retirement age. In China, it's 60. Life expectancy, 78. You get to retire for 18 years. In Iran, same thing, but you only get 14 years because you die earlier. Ukraine, same thing. You get 11 years retirement. North Korea, you get 13 years of retirement. USA, you get 10 years of retirement. People in North Korea get more years of retirement than people in the United States.
That's uniquely American.
That's uniquely not great.
Except for Russia, I guess.
And then when you're 67, you can still you work 3 jobs. Isn't that neat? Isn't that uniquely American? 67 years old, the highest. Do you see how screwed over America? And Americans don't even say anything. They just raised your retirement rate at 8 to 67, and Americans don't give a shit. So we get the least amount of retirement in the whole world. Just so we're clear, the French are protesting en masse at the offices of BlackRock, and Americans are throwing their buckets in the trash.
Again, if you want to boycott Bud Light, you got to boycott about 50 different garbage
How
drinks.
stupid Americans are. That's what we protest.
Why do you think they even made those? So that you would worry about that.
That's right, so it would be a distraction. All this stuff is a distraction. I would say 98% of all the trans talk in the country is a distraction on purpose. I would say about 98%. I would say the same thing about when you hear someone say white supremacy.
That's a weird one because I'm like, wait, Ukraine? Like, no, of course not Ukraine.
Not
Right
Ukraine.
here. The Twitter files.
You know, we elected Barack Obama twice. And a lot of those voters voted for Bernie Sanders, and a lot of those voters went and voted for Donald Trump. The problem in America is economic. Is there race problems? Yes. Is there problems with people discriminating against trans
Keep the economic thing a secret.
Yeah.
Of course there's problems with race here. How do you control the prison?
There. It's very well said, Kurt. This is because the Democratic Party and the Republican Party both turn their backs on workers. So now the Democrats and the establishment, all they have to talk about is culture issues like bathrooms and gender confirming surgery and sports, trans athletes in sports, and it's all they're talking about,
Can you imagine explaining the bathroom controversy
No,
to a bunch of people that live in the street?
right?
Like,
But in France, they got their heads on right. They're over there.
well, you know why? They say, who quoted that? Was it Mitt Romney? Was it Pierre Delecto, a.k.a. Mitt Romney, that said, people want this entitlement, it's really hard to get them back from the people.
Yes.
So they've had this system for a while that was better than the others. But you're not reducing my,
China gives you almost 20 years of retirement. In the United States, about half.
it's like, I mean, what if you had 20 more years to spend with your guns that you... Imagine if you applied this gun rights logic to just this kind of...
They retired 7 years earlier in China. Almost a decade earlier, Americans work a decade longer than Chinese people. Capitalism, huh? Our system's the best, greatest system in the world.
Well, I bet a lot of that...
We got that freedom and liberty to work an extra decade.
You know what a lot of that is, too, is the way the family's set up is your kids are ultimately your retirement.
Yeah,
And America doesn't have that kind of culture like that.
no. Go to jimmydore.com to see my new stand-up special, COVID Lies Are Funny. For only $10, you get to become a premium member, too. I don't think so. French protesters invade BlackRock's offices because of its private pension fund activity. Protester Francois Onek, 51, told Reuters the government wants to throw away pensions. It wants to force people to fund their own retirement with private pension funds. Of course, that's what BlackRock wants. That's what George Bush tried to do here in the United States in the early aughts when he was trying to, we're going to give some of that money back to you. Then you can put it in the market. That's your own money. You can put it, yeah, they want your retirement money in the stock market. That's what they want. They want your money. George Carlin was right when he said they're coming for your Social Security. That's what they're doing. Oh, you want to say something, Kurt?
Oh yeah, it took me a while to realize pension meant their Social Security.
Their Social Security is a pension, yeah. So they have a public pension, and they want to move all their money to private pension, just like in the United States.
That everybody would freak out about here.
That's right.
That's what they did, right?
Instead of burning down small businesses in Kenosha and Portland, it looks like the French have stumbled upon the actual enemy. Yeah. Yes.
That's how you know when it's a real grassroots thing and not a thing filled with feds and God knows what else.
If they're burning down local grocery stores and stuff like that, it's a Fed-infiltrated bullshit thing. So this is how you're supposed to do it. Go to BlackRock headquarters. And it gets worse. There's the retirement age in China at 60, life expectancy 78. You get to retire for 18 years. In Iran, same thing, but you only get 14 years because you die earlier. Ukraine, same thing, you get 11 years retirement. North Korea, you get 13 years of retirement. USA, you get 10 years of retirement. People in North Korea get more years of retirement than people in the United States.
That's uniquely American.
That's uniquely not great.
Except for Russia, I guess.
And then when you're 67, you can work 3 jobs. Isn't that neat? Isn't that uniquely American? 67 years old, the highest. Do you see how screwed over America? And Americans don't even say anything. They just raised your retirement rate at 8 to 67, and Americans don't give a shit. We get the least amount of retirement in the whole world. Just so we're clear, the French are protesting en masse at the offices of BlackRock, and Americans are throwing their butts in the trash.
Again, if you want to boycott Bud Light, you got to boycott about 50 different garbage drinks.
How stupid Americans are. That's what we protest.
Why do you think they even made those? So that you would worry about that.
That's right, so it would be a distraction. All this stuff is a distraction. I would say 98% of all the trans talk in the country is a distraction on purpose. I would say about 98% of it. I would say the same thing about when you hear someone say white supremacy.
That's a weird one because I'm like, wait, Ukraine? Like, no, of course not Ukraine.
Not Ukraine.
Twitter files.
You know, we elected Barack Obama twice. And a lot of those voters voted for Bernie Sanders, and a lot of those voters went and voted for Donald Trump. The problem in America is economic. Is there race problems? Yes. Is there problems with people discriminating?
How are we going to keep the economic thing a secret? Of course there's problems with race here. How do you control the prison?
Yeah, it's very well said, Kurt. This is because the Democratic Party and the Republican Party both turned their backs on workers. So now the Democrats and the establishment, all they have to talk about is culture issues like bathrooms and gender affirming surgery and sports and trans athletes in sports, and that's all they're talking about.
Can you imagine explaining the bathroom controversy to a bunch of people that live in the street?
Right? But in France, they got their heads on right. They're over there.
Well, you know why? They say, who quoted that? Was it Pierre Delecto, a.k.a. Mitt Romney, that said, people, once there's entitlement, it's really hard to get them back from the people?
Yes.
So they've had this system for a while that was better than the others. But you're not reducing
China gives you almost 20 years of retirement. The United States, about half.
I mean, what if you had 20 more years to spend with your guns that you... Imagine if you applied this gun rights logic to just this kind of thing.
They retired 7 years earlier in China. Almost a decade earlier, Americans work a decade longer than Chinese people. Capitalism, huh? Our system's the best, greatest system in the world.
Well, I bet a lot of that.
We got that freedom and liberty to work an extra decade.
You know what a lot of that is too is the way the family's set up is your kids are ultimately your retirement.
Yeah.
No.
America doesn't have that kind of culture like that.
No. Offroad.com to see my new stand-up special, COVID Lies Are Funny. For only $10, you get to become a premium member too. And come see us do our live shows. We're going to be doing stand-up comedy in Milwaukee, Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, New York, Co-host, New York, Hartford, Connecticut. Well,
he's supported by BlackRock. So if you want BlackRock, they just keep hammering that.
French President Emmanuel Macron is hugely popular with money managers like BlackRock, Inc., that is. While Macron languishes in the French polls, investors give him high marks for. Of course, the corporate media, you remember this. Gunshot victims left waiting as horse dewormer overdoses overwhelm Oklahoma. So this was supposed to be September 21st in Oklahoma. People are out in winter coats, apparently, and they're waiting in line to get in an emergency room. Who does that? And they have gunshots. All these people have gunshots, according to this. And then everybody ran it, including Rachel Maddow. She ran it, right? This tweet is still up. She's not retracted. She hasn't retracted any lies she's ever said. She leaves them up.
So, do they think that Joe Rogan's doctor prescribed him a thing with the horse on the cover?
I think they think that. That's what they want people to think.
I mean, you do a lot of push-ups.
That's what they want people to think. And it turns out it works for most people.
Well, I found out at Rolling Stone, by the way. I watched about.
Go watch a comedy show. Anyway, it works. The propaganda works.
See that guy? He got his son kind of like took over, and that's why when Rolling Stone started doing that, like Rachel Maddow.
Yeah.
His kid, that guy's kid,
that's right.
Took over.
He's horrible. This guy that Joe Rogan humiliated.
Yeah, that guy is not even his. Isn't Joe Maddow is that kid?
Yeah,
his nepo baby.
So. The person who Glenn Greenwald says the person who wanted a $30 million Comcast contract by telling liberals that the Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, lab leak was debunked, Trump had a secret serve with Alpha Bank, Russia put bounties on U.S. soldiers. She's now too worried about lies to show Trump's speech. So that's who these people are. In fact, you know that their approval rating for corporate media is below politicians now. That's how bad it is. Trusted news has collapsed. Look how low it is. It's all the way down there. It's like 11%. Trust in it's at 11%. I think that's
an all-time high.
That's like that's right around what the approval rating for Congress is. That's how bad news is. Corporate news is.
It's still worse than that, though.
So Glenn Greenwald, he's going to tell most of the story about this Matt Taibbi thing. So it is true when you expose establishment lies and wrongdoing, as Twitter files showed that the FBI, the DHS, the CIA were censoring the internet. They will send out all their hacks and spokespeople to attack you. Watch how the BBC tried this with me during the Snowden reporting. So he knows how this goes. I saw how this went with me as soon as I tried to hold AOC and the Democrats accountable during Force the Vote. A myriad of smear pieces emerged in the corporate-owned news media. New York Magazine, Newsweek, Washington Post. So Glenn Greenwald then says, so from the start, liberal politicians and journalists knew they had to attack the Twitter files. It exposed the axis of the U.S. security state, the Democratic Party, media corporations, and big tech liberals who created the censorship regime. First it was a nothing burger, and now it's just mistakes. That's what they're saying now. So on Wednesday, Matt Taibbi was interviewed by Peacock host Mehdi Hassan, and Hassan, in his standard style, melodramatically pointed out a couple of mild errors in Taibbi's extensive Twitter files reporting. Turns out that I think two of those aren't even errors. Yeah, he pointed out three things. Two of them aren't even errors. And Taibbi prominently corrected them all before that segment even aired. That's like what a responsible journalist would do when you have some minor factual inaccuracies in your overall story. You go back and correct them, and that's what he did.
I don't do. I didn't used to work here when that happened.
That's what I say. So yes, in hundreds of tweets and articles reporting the Twitter files, there were a couple of errors that Taibbi instantly corrected. That's how you build trust and integrity with your readers. On the other hand, MSNBC and CNN and liberal media never correct their errors. They've never corrected that the Steele dossier was 100% made up. They've never corrected that Paul Manafort was giving these secret polling data. They never, to the Russians, they never corrected anything they said about the server or the Russians or Trump or anything, or Julian Assange. They still let people believe. So there you go. So Matt Taibbi tweeted this out. He says, part of the job is facing critics and making corrections when appropriate. This is how we arrive at truth in a free press system. I went on Mehdi Hassan today to defend the Twitter files precisely because MSNBC hasn't engaged in this process across years of Russiagate reports. Show you how to do it. Matt Taibbi's like, I'm going to, like, but again, dumb idea. It was bad. He has bad advisors. He has bad decisions. Because that was a bad idea. Because you think you're going to get him, he's just going to come in and sandbag you and talk over you, which is exactly what he did. Then he said, but for Mehdi Hassan to gloat over two minor errors while dismissing both the substance of censorship story in the Twitter files and the fact that those stories expose significant uncorrected mistakes by his own network is incredible. Stand by my work. So that's Matt Taibbi's official position. So you want to see what happened. So here's the big moment when Mehdi Hassan has the big gotcha. Here we go. You talk a lot about the Election Integrity Project in the Twitter files, which Stanford and the University of Washington. The Election Integrity Project, funded by the government, founded to monitor attacks on our elections. And you say some stuff about them that a lot of your critics say is not true, and that affects your credibility. You said the EIP was founded in response to the government dropping its proposal for a disinformation government. Well, there you are, we're quoting you on screen. It wasn't. It was formed 2 years earlier. You suggest it was government funded, even though during the 2020 election that you're covering, it wasn't. You say they labeled 22 million tweets as misinformation in the run-up to the 2020 vote. They didn't. They flagged 3,000 election misinformation tweets. Now, turns out Matt Taibbi's got this right, and Mehdi's got this one wrong. Okay, further review. Turns out Mehdi's gotcha isn't a gotcha. For labeling, so you were only 21,997,000 off. And you also claim the EIP was, let me finish the question, you can come back in. You also claim the EIP was partnered with the government cybersecurity and infrastructure agency, CISA, to censor Twitter, but you mix up. But they did. But now he's going to pretend like because Matt got a acronym wrong that he didn't. CISA, a Homeland Security Agency with the Center for Internet Security, the CIS, which is a non-profit. In fact, you added an A to CIS, I think people can see it there, in brackets, to make that false claim. It's just error after error, Malcolm, just this one time. Okay, so those are the big gotchas. But the other ones aren't. The other ones aren't? It's 22 million number came from their own report? Yeah, where did it came from a report in March 20. Do you know what the 22 million number is, Matt? Can you tell me? Because we checked. 22 million is the number of tweets about election misinformation that they just mapped. How many tweets were they? The ones they actually flagged to Twitter before the election, 22 million came after the election. It wasn't in the run-up. They flagged 3,000. So you're off by 21,997,000. It's a lot of error. A lot of things. I stand by my story. So he's right, and Mehdi's wrong about that. So, and it turns out Matt Taibbi was right about the CISA thing. So I know this is going to get into the weeds, but I'll give you a real broad brush. Washington was reporting misinformation to CIS and CISA in 2020. It was partnership. Mehdi Hassan should retract his post. And what post should he retract? He says, my last word on CISA and CIS. Matt Taibbi suggested a nonprofit was an intel agency to try and prove government collusion and censorship. It wasn't just a typo or a minor error. He said it to Congress under oath. It was key to his thesis. Will he be asking Jim Jordan to correct the record? That's not. They were working. That's all not true. So what he's saying there is not true. That they're a nonprofit. Here, I'll show. So right there, they were reporting misinformation to CIS and CISA. So this is particularly stupid gotcha, given that CIS was the government contractor working for CISA and the Department of Homeland Security to help facilitate